Name one characteristic of Renaissance music.
Polyphony, usually imitation.
Good. Who was the composer known as the red-haired priest?
Antonio Vivaldi.
Yes. Which composer was born
Please
in
don't
Belgium
call on me.
in 1530?
Please don't call on me.
Orlando Di Lasso.
How did you know that?
How would you classify Bach's Saint Anne Fugue?
It's a 5-voice triple fugue
Okay,
for organ
Brainiac.
with 3
Now
subjects
you're just
introduced
making
into
stuff
3
up.
separate sections.
What key?
Seriously?
E flat.
Was that even in the book?
Your final exam is tomorrow, and it's going to be a whopper. But it seems like you guys are well prepared, so review your notes, and I will see you first thing in the morning. Dan, could I have a word with you?
Yeah.
Dan, you've really let your grades slip in this class. Your quizzes have not been great. I can't remember the last time you turned in a homework assignment, and I'm not convinced you're ready to take your final. And you're going to need a small miracle to pass for this year.
Yeah, good, yeah. I'll be fine, I'll be fine.
Is that right? Which composer subtitled his symphony From the New World?
Imagine Dragons.
No, Dan, that's On the Top of the World. How about this? In which era did symphonies become longer and more elaborate?
That building in Boston?
No, Dan, that's Symphony Hall. I suggest you study tonight. A lot.
Not going to pass. Not going to pass. Late Baroque, okay. Dance styles. Allemande, Vivaldi, okay. I'm just gonna watch a movie and go to bed.
Dan!
Oh my gosh! Is it time for my final exam?
No, Dan. You're asleep. You fell asleep watching Star Wars.
Oh, right. I love the music. It's the only reason I took that crazy elective course anyway.
Well, I'm here to help you, Dan.
Are you
John Williams.
a composer?
The same. Music history is a fascinating subject, Dan. You can really hear and see how music evolved through the ages along with art, architecture, even fashion. Since you're dreaming, this shouldn't be too hard. Where should we begin?
The Renaissance.
Dan, the Renaissance was an exciting time of great discovery and innovation. Music was no exception, and composers were taking quite a few liberties with harmony since they were not bound by church rules.
Where would you hear music outside of the church?
Well, for starters, it was used to announce the arrival of guests in kingdoms of old.
Cool. What else? Did they still chant?
Well, they added more voices. Women were not allowed to sing in church, but outside church, it was fine. So with all of these extra voices around, polyphonic music was born. Composers didn't write accompaniment for a specific instrument like they do today either. Instead, they wrote an accompaniment in a specific range, usually the bass, and whatever instrument was available to play the part was used. Madrigal singing at parties was a great source of entertainment in the Renaissance.
Those are cool. I think I hear the difference between that and the monk dudes.
Yes, but toward the end of the Renaissance era, which was when?
1600.
Right. Around this time, composers were getting a little carried away with all the extra voices, and equal temperament was invented.
Whose idea was that?
It's not really one person, Dan, although it is kind of difficult to discuss the Baroque era without mentioning Johann Sebastian Bach.
What was so special about Bach?
The invention of keyboard instruments, such as the accordion, the harpsichord, clavier, and the church organ, which was Bach's favorite, led to the standardization of the 12-note system that we use today, where a piece of music could be played in one key and then transposed to another key easily.
Did Bach invent equal temperament?
No, Bach didn't invent equal temperament, but he did write a book called The Well-Tempered Clavier that really highlighted the new system and got everyone excited about the new sound.
Kind of like the electric guitar.
Well, kind of like that, I suppose. Most of Bach's works, including The Well-Tempered Clavier, featured a short melodic idea called the subject, and then the other voices would come in one at a time and weave a countermelody along to the subject. The ideas would develop throughout the piece. Independence between parts and establishing key centers was of the utmost importance.
So, what came next?
Well, folks got tired of hearing all of those independent melodies playing at the same time, and it became very popular to write a single, memorable melody with accompaniment. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was the master of this style. Do you know this one?
Of course.
Mozart. The thing about the classical era was that the beauty of the melody was the most important element, and that writing 4 separate melodies at the same time, like the Baroque era, was not as popular. It was a simpler time, right around the time of the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, Three-Cornered Hats, and Yankee Doodle.
Oh, that's a singable melody.
Right, classical era. How about some more Mozart?
Wow, that's completely different from that Bach tune. What came after that?
Well, the Romantic era ensued. The Industrial Revolution happened. Everything got bigger. We got the Brooklyn Bridge, we got the Eiffel Tower, and the piston valve was invented too.
The piston valve?
Yes, it was a big deal for the trumpet players. Triumph over adversity was a common theme. The afterglow of both the French and the American Revolution were reflected in the music, the art, and the architecture. The symphonies got longer, and there were more members in the orchestra. And because of the Industrial Revolution, we were able to create better quality instruments, capable of a broader range, and they played more in tune.
Okay, that makes sense.
Romantic music doesn't sound as cute as classical era music. The music is much more emotional, and composers wrote in broad, lush strokes. There were still great melodies, but they were intensified. I borrowed a few of these melodies for some of my film music. Have a listen. You know, opera also became very popular during the Romantic period. Italian composers like Giuseppe Verdi would take a very emotional libretto or story and set it to these beautiful lyrical melodies with huge, lush orchestral harmonies. One of Verdi's most famous choruses comes from the opera Nabucco, which follows the plight of the Hebrew slaves as they are assaulted, conquered, and subsequently exiled from their homeland by the Babylonian king Nabucco. In this next chorus, the Hebrew slaves are singing about missing their homes and former lives. Make note of the very expressive and memorable melody sung by the choir. This was a characteristic of operatic melodies of this era. There was a huge emphasis on melodic singing during the Romantic period, and not just in opera. There was also a renewed interest in amateur singing in the home. Composers like Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms wrote songs for soloists and small groups to sing with family and friends.
I think I'm getting it now. Music really does reflect the life and times of the people of the age. Is there more?
Of course! There's the 20th century, and the modern era. But does your test go up that far?
I don't know. Better give me something just in case.
Okay. Texts were often based on folk stories or songs, and melodies used narrower ranges to accommodate untrained singers' voices. This style was so popular that some composers continued to write this type of music well into the 20th century. Sergei Rachmaninoff, a virtuosic pianist and composer, wrote a set of 10 songs for voice and piano in order to finance his honeymoon. One song from the cycle, entitled The Lilacs, became so well loved that people regularly presented Rachmaninoff with bouquets of lilacs anytime he performed. As with most styles and fads, people got tired of hearing the same thing after a while. Some composers continued to use big orchestras, and others went in the opposite direction with smaller settings of music. They all had one thing in common, though. They began to stretch harmony to the breaking point. A lot of the rules that governed tonal harmony for the last 4 centuries were ignored. Melodies became interesting, and sometimes a bit unusual. Have a listen to this.
Beautiful. Different, but beautiful. How about the music of today?
Well, there's so much. After the inventive melodies of the 20th century, we saw many different styles of music emerge. African music merged with the blues from New Orleans and gave birth to jazz, which turned into rock and roll, which turned into